All right, welcome everyone. We're doing something a little different today. We're taking you into the theater to review a fan production that is just, well, it's epic. So I want you to imagine this. You're here with me, we're in our seats, the lights are getting low, and we're about to experience a really raw, really ambitious piece of theater. So we're flipping through the program, and this is the line that just jumps out at us. This is their mission statement. It's this grand, sweeping vision from the actual, real-world lightsaber stun academy that put this whole incredible story together. So yeah, this isn't just some story they're telling, it's a full-on creative passion project. You can think of this as the play ball, right? It's explaining all the incredible work that's gone on behind the scenes. Okay, you can feel that buzz in the room, the house lights are officially dimming. Let's dive in. The stage goes almost completely dark. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine just vast blackness. You can actually smell the stage effects, this scent of smoke and damp earth. And way in the background, these distant red lights flash, erratically, just painting the chaos of a battlefield onto this otherwise bare set. A single, dim light slowly comes up on center stage, and it reveals the simple straw hut. Inside, there's a lone actress playing the mother, Vioni, and she is deep in labor. Her face is projected on a huge screen above the stage, and it is just a mask of sweat and pure, unfiltered rage as she's trying to choke back her screams against the sounds of war raging outside. The staging here is, wow, it's so incredibly effective. Because of this really clever projection effect, we're positioned to be looking with her through a tiny crack in the hut door. And through that crack, we see these white-armored invaders just cutting down villagers in the mud with blaster fire. It's so intimate and terrifying. You feel like you're trapped in there with her, seeing only what she sees. With one final, raging scream, the sound perfectly syncs with a massive explosion just outside the hut. And the child is born. A small, fragile-looking puppet is brought on stage to represent the newborn Dyllannium. He's born, literally, into a world of violence and rage, which the story tells us has been intoxicating him since he was in the womb. So the mother holds her child, but as he opens his eyes, the entire stage lighting narrows to a single, sharp spotlight right on him. And the puppet's eyes, they're not an infant's eyes. Two tiny little LEDs glow with this sickening, yellow-stained red light. The actress just recoils in absolute terror, and boom, the stage plunges back into total darkness. It is chilling stuff. All right, so the lights come up on Act 2, and this set is stark, it's grim. We're now in what looks like a dusty, dirt floor basement. The only prop on the whole stage is this thick wooden pole right in the center, and chained to it is the child, Dyllannium, who's now played by a young, really gaunt actor. The director uses this brutal but really effective montage to show time passing. The stage just floods with different actors. You see traitors, miners, gang members, and each one appears under this harsh, strobing light to inflict some new horror on the boy. It's just a relentless depiction of suffering, shown through really clever shadow play and these sharp, violent poses that just forge the child's silent rage. This next scene just powerfully illustrates his growing power. See, after some miners blow up their hut, and they use a huge flash of pyrotechnics for this, he and his mother somehow survive, buried in rubble. And she sees his cold, unblinking stare and asks him if he caused the collapse to save them. And the young actor's simple, guttural, yeah, absolutely terrifies her. We then watch as she uses even thicker chains tightening his prison. And here, the whole tone of the play just shifts dramatically. The nonstop violence is gone, and it's replaced by this chilling, heavy silence. We find the boy, now a teenager, all alone on a straw bed, just staring into the darkest corner of the basement. He stares into that darkness for what feels like an eternity. A low grunt is his only way of communicating. And you can feel it. Everyone in the audience is leaning in. Our eyes are fixed on that same black abyss. The tension is so thick. And then, slowly, the darkness starts to stare back. Two black horns, puppeteered on these long rods, emerge from the shadows. They're followed by the head of a small bull, and then the muscular body of another young actor. It is a stunning piece of stagecraft. This creature is stepping right out of a nightmare and into the dim light. The creature screams, "I am anger." Dyllannium just roars back, and because he can't speak, his thoughts are projected as text on the back wall. "I am rage." They just clash in this whirlwind of choreographed stunt work until they're both exhausted, and that exhaustion turns into laughter. This creature, Anger, who he later nicknames Barrack, becomes Dyllannium's other half. He's the friend from within, the voice for his silent fury. Now, what's so crucial here is that this friend isn't just a brawler, he's a teacher. We watch through a series of these quiet, focused scenes as Barrack gives Dyllannium the tools he needs to plan his escape. He's whispering knowledge about the outside world, teaching him how to find his own food, and showing him how to slowly, patiently weaken his own prison. Okay, let's get to the finale. The stage completely transforms. The dark basement set pieces are just pulled away into the wings, and they're replaced by this epic vision projected onto the entire back wall of the theater. It's a vision from Dyllannium's own mind, the future that he's forging. And here we see that vision made complete. He's no longer a chained beast, but a towering Sith Lord on an obsidian throne. The actor stands on a high platform, his dark silhouette matching the projection behind him perfectly. And the sound design? It's incredible. You can feel the imagined roar of millions of soldiers chanting his name, a sound so powerful it literally shakes the entire theater to its foundations. And that is where the curtain falls. It's a breathtaking, intense performance that leaves all of us with this really powerful final thought. It's just a testament to the creative power of fandom, and a story that argues the dark side isn't something you choose, it's something that's forged in trauma from your very first breath. Bravo.
Imagine you're walking into this underground experimental black box theater.
Oh, yeah, you can just smell the ozone.
Exactly. It smells like ozone and fresh sawdust and like cheap theatrical fog. You take your seat in a folding chair, the house lights just abruptly cut out, and a performance begins that is entirely unhinged. It's so intensely physical.
And deeply, deeply surreal.
Right. So for this deep dive, our source material is a single, highly unusual document. It's by an author named Ryan Dillon Brassington, and it's called The Sith Empire.
And it starts as this, ultra-violent, gritty sci-fi fan fiction.
Yeah, but then abruptly, with literally zero warning, it just turns into a real-world business plan for a local stunt academy.
It's a wild ride. So today, we are fully channeling our inner theater critics.
Oh, absolutely.
Our mission here is to treat this document like an ambitious avant-garde stage play. We want to help you, the listener, visualize the sheer absurdity of the staging.
Our practical effects, too.
Yes. And ultimately how one man attempted to turn his darkest fictional fantasies into, well, a neighborhood community center pitch.
Okay, let's unpack this. To set the stage, we open on a muddy battlefield.
Right, and the theatrical lighting here is just a barrage of blood-red strobe flashes cutting through the smoke.
And stage left, there's this meticulously constructed set piece. The author describes it as a hut-strew door.
Which, we assume means a straw hut.
Yeah, a straw hut that's rigged to look like it's taking heavy artillery fire. And right in the center of this chaos, a woman named Viamani is giving birth.
While invaders in white helmets are actively shooting her friends just outside the cracks in the straw.
It's incredibly intense.
The stage directions for the actress playing the mother are just demanding. She's grinding her teeth, she's sweating.
The text explicitly states she is swimming in the passion of rage.
Right, so it's this scene of overwhelming high-stakes trauma, but then the tone immediately undercuts that tension with these bizarre biological details about the baby.
Oh my gosh, yes. The moment baby Dyllannium is born, his metabolism just kicks into this extreme overdrive.
He latches on to feed and digest milk at a highly accelerated rate.
Wait, hold on, let me get this straight.
All right.
The mother is dodging laser fire, her friends are being actively eliminated outside the door, and the script's primary focus shifts to the newborn's gastrointestinal speed.
That is exactly what happens.
How do you even write that? I mean, is it described clinically, or is it meant to be terrifying?
It's written as a sign of dark, impending power. The rapid digestion is building this furious energy within the infant.
Wow.
And that leads to the grand visual reveal. The baby opens his eyes.
And what a visual it is.
The text specifies that the eyes glow yellow, bleed into a vibrant red, and feature a pure dark pupil that resembles a black hole feeding off the outer colors.
So if you were the director staging this, that requires some serious practical effects.
Absolutely.
I'm picturing like a heavy animatronic Muppet baby, but someone has hot-wired high-intensity LED lights into its eye sockets.
Yes, just radiating pure apocalyptic fury.
Exactly. And the text says the mother sees these glowing eyes, and contemplates throwing the newborn into the waste bin.
A totally normal reaction.
Right. But she reconsiders and instead chains him to a thick wooden pole in a dirt basement.
Naturally.
So why start a story with such extreme, almost comical levels of newborn trauma? What is the narrative function of putting a glowing baby in a dirt basement?
Well, the author is establishing the ultimate underdog environment. By placing the child in what he calls the dark den, the set design is really doing the heavy lifting for the rest of the narrative.
I can see that. Picture a cramped, dusty space with a single harsh light source beaming down from the top of the stairs.
Exactly. And the boy is reduced to a feral wildling down there.
He becomes a hidden spectacle, kept down there specifically for visiting spice runners, gamblers, and scammers to gawk at and torment.
Right. So if this child is established as having this dark, almost indestructible power, how does the author test those limits?
Because surviving a battlefield birth is one thing, but this environment seems engineered to create a stuntman.
Oh, definitely. We get a scene where a group of rough mining trade workers surround the chained child.
And the text says they're from the lava planet Mustafa, and they are flicking hot cancer sticks at his belly. Wait,
Yeah.
Mustafa, like the Lion King character, or the lava planet Mustafar from Star Wars.
It is clearly a misspelling of Mustafar from the Star Wars universe.
That brings up a massive elephant in the room for me.
Oh, a copyright issue.
Yes. If you're listening to this and evaluating it as the foundation for a real-life business venture, how does the author navigate the colossal, highly litigious army of Disney copyright lawyers?
That's the thing. He ignores it entirely.
Really, he just casually uses names like Sith, Jedi, and Mustafar for a commercial pitch. Does he address the intellectual property theft at all?
Completely unbothered by copyright law, he is simply using the established lore as a sandbox to build his own highly specific, highly violent universe.
And the violence is where the physical choreography of our imaginary stage play goes completely off the rails.
Oh, it is pure slapstick. The miners flicking the cigarettes inevitably leave a leaking gas can behind.
Of course they do.
And someone outside lights a fuse, and the script demands a massive mushroom cloud.
A sound effect written simply as "na boom" is in the text.
Na boom! And the entire house collapses into the basement.
The staging here would be so chaotic. Orange flashes, smoke machines running dry, debris falling from the rafters.
But the aftermath is what really gets me.
Right, the smoke slowly clears. The mother, who is downstairs chaining him up, survives the blast.
She looks over at the boy. He is covered in burning rubble.
The smell of burning flesh is actually described in the text, but he hasn't even blinked.
She asks, terrified, "Did you do this?"
And the boy, standing in the smoldering ruins of his home, just grunts. Yeah.
I love it. That deadpan delivery amid literal rubble is peak Buster Keaton physical comedy.
It really is. The mother is so unnerved by his resilience that she moves him to an even bigger basement with thicker poles and thicker chains.
And from there, the author accelerates the timeline into a rapid-fire montage of escalating absurdity.
The montage we would see on the stage would leave the audience breathless.
We have a 7-year-old Dyllannium getting a full back tattoo in a single night.
Surrounded by a gang of laughing brothers, taking the burning sting of the needle without shedding a single tear.
Then the lights shift, and he is engaged in a game of gun roulette with adults.
The gun clicks against his head twice, but his mysterious power saves him.
And then, perhaps the most baffling visual in the entire document.
A scene described only as Ewok dress up at adult parties.
You can just imagine the costuming department staring at that single line of text and wondering how to execute it.
What does that even look like? Do we have actors in furry bear suits wandering through the background of this dark, gritty torture basement holding cocktail glasses?
The text does not elaborate. It just throws that image at you and moves on.
Incredible. But the climax of this physical torment sequence is where the action choreography really shines.
A stranger comes down into the basement and starts throwing rocks at the boy.
And the boy finally snaps. He lunges at the stranger, grabs him by the head, and bites his nose clean off.
And the sound design here is explicitly scripted by the author.
Yes. The boy runs back to his dark corner, and the text provides the exact Foley sounds for the audience.
Chop, 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 gulp.
He chews the nose up and swallows it.
What's fascinating here is how the author uses raw, shocking violence that eventually crosses over into sheer Looney Tunes territory.
It really does.
Yeah.
By escalating the trauma to such an absurd degree, it stops being horrific.
Exactly. Surviving gas explosions, biting noses, Getting full back tattoos at age 7, it becomes a macabre slapstick routine.
The author turns a space of victimization into a showcase of indestructible resilience.
You stop feeling sorry for the child and just start waiting to see what impossible scenario he will bounce back from next.
But once you have beaten the physical limits of a character, where do you go? You have to break the psyche.
This brings us to a beautiful transition from the physical world into a psychological stage play.
Dyllannium is sitting on his straw bed, staring into what the text calls the pitch-black abyss of the furthest corner of his basement.
The lighting designer would pull all the focus here. The shadows in that corner become unnaturally dense.
And catching the faint light, 2 long, black, pointed horns emerge.
Out from the shadow steps a figure with the muscular body of a child, but the head, wide face, and large nostrils of a bull.
A minotaur child.
With a huff from its nostrils, it kicks up a cloud of stage dust.
The bull child flexes every single muscle in his body to frighten Dyllannium and screams, "I am anger."
But Dyllannium does not back down. He screams right back, "Ni na nam R-A-H-H."
Which the text helpfully translates for us as, "I am rage."
And then they clash.
They engage in this incredibly choreographed, hours-long wrestling match right there in the basement dirt.
They are rolling around, throwing punches, grappling. It is a pure physical expression of pent-up emotion.
They fight until they are both completely exhausted, lying on their backs on the floor, chests heaving.
From the silence, one starts to laugh, then the other. They are intoxicated with the joy of the battle.
It is a surprisingly beautiful moment of connection amid all the grunge.
But then we get a flawless piece of theatrical timing.
The basement door swings wide open. A harsh, bright white light floods the entire room.
The audience sees exactly what the boy sees. The bull child is gone.
The dust on the floor where they were wrestling is completely undisturbed. It was an empty corner the whole time.
It is such a great reveal.
Wait, so does this mean the boy just wrestled himself in the dirt for hours, Fight Club style?
That is precisely what happened. It's a theatrical reveal of his fracturing psyche.
Wow.
But this imaginary friend, who he later nicknames Barrack because the name anger inflamed his fury too much, becomes his salvation.
Barrack becomes his tutor.
He teaches the boy language, conversation, deception, and the knowledge required to overthrow the system holding him captive.
Barrack also teaches him the survival skills necessary for a grand escape.
The staging for this escape is visceral.
To cut off his dependence on the meager food slid under the door, Barrack instructs him to eat pure protein.
Does the text actually explain how a chained child sources pure protein in a dirt basement?
It does, and the actor would have to pantomime this gruesome process.
Oh, no.
He lures grubs and termites out of the rotting wood using sweet straw, captures them in his mouth, and drinks dew from the moss growing between the brickwork.
It is an incredibly raw depiction of survival.
He uses his own chains to carve away the rotting wood, breaks free, climbs out of the dirt hole, and heads toward his destiny.
The lights go down, the crowd is on their feet.
But if you were listening to this and wondering how a child biting a nose off and eating termites translates to a business model, stick with us.
Because the pivot is whiplash-inducing.
The visual formatting of the document itself changes completely at this exact moment.
The dense, dark fantasy prose abruptly stops. The page transitions into structured bullet points outlining equipment needs and pricing tiers.
All of the wild, gritty, explosion-surviving backstory was actually a sprawling fictional foundation for a real-life business venture.
The stage lights come up, and we are no longer in a dirt basement. We are in a brightly lit gymnasium.
Welcome to the Sith Empire Jedi Stunts and Lightsaber Academy.
Run by the real-world Sith Lord Dyllannium Power, also known as Ryan Dillon Brasseton.
The author connects the imaginary physical theater we just witnessed to a physical space designed for the public.
The set design for this real-world academy is ambitious.
Yeah.
The bullet points list requirements like spring bounce boards, thick sponge mats for landing, foam block barricades, and green screens.
But the absolute crown jewel of this vision is something he calls the motorized pulley system.
He spends a significant amount of text detailing this rigging, openly admitting that it doesn't yet exist, but asking how he might get it made or patented.
He is attempting to build a Hollywood wire-fu rig in a local hall with a high roof.
But his proposed engineering is entirely DIY.
Let's break down the physics of his invention, because it sounds terrifying.
Please do.
He wants a remote-controlled system so people can raise and release themselves at will to fly, float, and swing while sword fighting.
And his solution?
An electric skateboard with hand control that is fixed down to an arched frame. He literally wants to bolt a skateboard motor to the ceiling, to act as a makeshift winch.
That is amazing.
You connect a rope from your feet up to the ceiling, down to a chest vest attached to a swiveling frame, put on spring boots, and hit the skateboard throttle.
That sounds less like Jedi training and more like a recipe for a catastrophic spinal injury.
It is wonderfully inventive, but highly concerning from a liability standpoint.
You can picture the stagehands in our theater nervously watching a performer test this contraption.
But the business model attached to this dangerous rigging is fully fleshed out with various pricing packages.
Let's talk about those packages. If you want to be lured to the dark side, day one is just a $20 per hour floor fee.
But if you're a beginner looking for commitment, you can drop $100 for a 10-week cycle.
And that $100 gets you a package starter cloak and saber.
For returning learners, whom he affectionately calls the Sith wannabes, you can upgrade your package to receive a DVD of your training performances,
with special effects added in post-production.
He even mentions attaching mini microphones to the plastic sabers, linked to loudspeakers, so the staff can add live battle sound effects while you bounce around.
And if you stick around long enough to reach line 3, Sith Lordship, your $100 gets you an updated cloak, updated sabers, and my personal favorite item in the entire document.
What's that?
A personalized comic book of your own Sith Lord rising story. He will write you your very own Dyllannium Power origin story.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the document transcends being just a quirky, poorly spelled internet find and becomes something genuinely moving.
At the very end of the pitch, the author lists his real-world credentials to justify why he should run this academy.
He lists 8 years in childcare, 15 years as a youth mentor and support worker within community services,
2 years in disability and complex needs, and 8 years in performing arts and live entertainment.
He notes that he holds mental health first aid certificates and youth diplomas.
The uplifting irony here is just profound. The first half of the document is this incredibly dark, abusive story about a boy raised in dirt, swimming in the passion of rage.
But the reality is that the dark fiction is the creative engine for a man who has dedicated his entire adult life to youth work and community service.
He took the concept of childhood trauma, externalized it as a literal wrestling match with a minotaur in a dirt basement, and decided the best way to help other people process their own inner angst is to strap them into a harness.
Hand them a glowing plastic sword and let them bounce off foam blocks.
He is creating a heavily padded room for emotional regulation. It is a beautiful sentiment hidden inside a very weird document.
It is a testament to the idea that play, physical exertion, and leaning into our most ridiculous, dramatic fantasies can be a legitimate form of community building.
He is taking the darkest elements of his imagination and turning them into a collaborative community center project.
We have taken quite the journey today.
We really have. We started in a muddy war hut with a baby whose eyes glowed with pure, unadulterated fury.
We watched that child survive lava planet miners, massive gas explosions, and a 7-year-old's tattoo parlor.
We analyzed the theatrical staging of a boy biting a man's nose off and swallowing it whole.
We saw him wrestle his own imaginary rage demon in the dark until they both collapsed laughing.
And then we watched him break his chains, emerge into the light, and promptly try to patent an electric skateboard-powered flying harness so he could teach a 10-week stunt course for $100.
It is a phenomenal reminder of the power of physical performance. Translating our own internal angst into creative, choreographed movement is not just highly entertaining.
It can be incredibly healing. It is about using the wildest parts of your mind to fuel something joyful.
And making sure you have a very thick sponge mat to land on when the skateboard motor gives out.
Always use the sponge mats. Thank you for joining us on this wild theatrical review.
Before we drop the final curtain, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
We all have that one intense childhood obsession, or maybe an imaginary friend who helped us navigate the dark times in our own basements. If you had to design a 10-week physical stunt course based entirely on your own weirdest childhood imaginary friend, what would your motorized pulley system look like? Keep exploring those deep dives of your own imagination, and we will catch you next time.
Imagine you're reviewing the resume of a certified youth counselor.
Right, someone who works with kids.
Exactly. So it lists 15 years of childcare, disability support, mental health first aid, all the standard, really impressive stuff.
Sounds like a very dedicated professional.
Totally. But now, imagine his business proposal for a new community center opens with a 7-year-old child biting a man's nose completely off and, swallowing it whole.
Yeah, that is a pretty sharp pivot.
It's wild. But today, we're looking at a document that is exactly that. Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this, you're about to go on a seriously unexpected journey with us.
You really are. It's quite a ride.
We have this stack of sources today, and they all come from this single, deeply unusual, just highly imaginative document.
Very imaginative and, well, kind of jarring.
Oh, completely jarring. It starts as this incredibly dark, gritty, visceral sci-fi origin story. I mean, we're talking muddy trenches, galactic invaders, and this almost demonic-looking child.
Which is intense enough on its own.
Right. But then, without any warning at all, it completely pivots into a pitch for a real-life community stunt and lightsaber academy.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of a structural bait and switch.
Yeah.
But, it operates on a level of psychological brilliance that you rarely see in community planning.
Oh, for sure.
We're essentially looking at a text that blends this brutal, hyper-cinematic storytelling with a really highly empathetic entrepreneurial vision.
It's a crazy mix. So our mission today is to explore this intensely dark fictional origin of a character named Sith Lord Dyllannium Power.
Quite a name.
Right. And then we want to unpack how this extreme rage-filled narrative actually serves as the creative foundation for an empowering real-world project designed for everyday people.
Exactly. It's about how the fiction serves the reality.
Okay, let's unpack this because we have to start where the story starts, right? Born in the mud and the rage.
The opening scene is really something else.
It is. The
Yeah.
document just throws you right into a nightmare scene, and the visual language is striking. You have to picture this muddy battlefield planet at night.
Just absolute chaos everywhere.
Yeah, and there's this pregnant mother named Vioni. She's taking shelter in this really fragile straw hut.
It's just a terrible place to be in labor.
Literally the worst. Outside, there are these white helmet invaders just stomping through the mud. And Vioni is looking through a tiny slit in her own door.
Watching the horrors unfold.
Exactly. She's watching her friends being shot down without hesitation. The author specifically describes these fire red light beams just bursting through the door cracks.
It's very cinematic. You can really see the colors, the dark mud and the bright red lasers.
Yeah. And she is in active labor, terrified to scream, like literally grinding her teeth to stay quiet. But here's what really caught my attention. It's the concept of rage in this scene.
Right, how it's portrayed.
It's not just an emotion she's feeling, it's treated like a biological substance.
It is. What's fascinating here is how the narrative treats trauma and rage as a tangible physical inheritance.
Like it's being passed down through the blood.
Exactly. It is a biological survival tool in a hostile galaxy. The author actually describes the mother's pulsating heart forcing adrenaline and blood into the womb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to the point where the unborn child is literally intoxicated by the rage that festers in from all walls.
Festers in from all walls. That is such a vivid line. It's like a pressure cooker.
That's a great way to put it.
The mother's terror is the heat, and the child is just absorbing all of it before he even takes his first breath. The author even mentions these living organisms, the metachlorians that give rise to his power.
Right, a clear nod to some classic sci-fi lore there.
Definitely. And because he's born prematurely under this immense agonizing pressure, the dark side basically claims him right then and there.
And the birth itself is described with this gritty, hyper-realistic aesthetic. He is born small and fragile, but with this insatiable, terrifying hunger.
Yeah, and then he opens his eyes. This is the chilling moment for the mother.
It really is a horror movie moment.
She looks down, and she sees this newborn baby with a yellow-stained red glow in his eyes.
That's unnatural.
The author writes that the pupils are like a dark, black abyss of fear and rage. And Vioni realizes she hasn't just birthed a child, right? She's birthed a monster destined for the dark side.
Which is a terrifying realization for any parent.
She is so horrified, she almost tosses him to the floor right there in the mud.
But she doesn't, and that singular decision sets up the entire next phase of the narrative.
You keep him.
She does. She avoids throwing him out to the wild outlands, but she is still terrified of what he is. So she hides him. And this takes us into what we could call the basement crucible.
Crucible is the perfect word for it.
She hides him in a dirt basement, chained to a thick wooden pole.
I mean, the list of things this kid endures in that basement is staggering. He's treated as a feral wildling by these space-faring criminals.
Spice runners, gamblers, the worst kind of people who visit the house above.
Let's talk about some of these incidents, because they are vividly described. It's so dark. At one point, there's a group of mining trade workers from the lava planet Mustafa.
Right.
They're standing around laughing, and they're flicking lit cancer sticks. basically space cigarettes at this chained child.
Just casual cruelty.
Yeah, and then on their way out, they deliberately leave a gas can leaking just to see something explode.
Which results in the complete destruction of the entire hut above them.
A massive mushroom cloud. And the author literally writes out the sound effect in the text. He writes, "Na boom."
It's a very comic book style inclusion.
It totally is. So the mother comes rushing down, the whole place collapses, but miraculously they survive in a small pocket of rubble.
He's not unscathed.
No. The child's back is actively burning from the explosion, but he doesn't even blink. His mother asks, "Did you do this?" And he just grunts, yeah.
He claims responsibility for the cave-in just to prove his power.
It's wild. He wants her to think he caused the explosion.
It establishes his absolute defiance. He's refusing to be a victim of his circumstances, and, that defiance only grows as the abuses escalate.
Oh, it gets so much wilder. At age 7, a gang of brothers holds him down to tattoo his entire back in a single night.
A 7-year-old child.
A 7-year-old. They're drinking booze and taking spice, just torturing this kid with burning dry needles.
And his reaction is what's really telling here.
He sits completely still. He doesn't cry. He doesn't shout. The gang is so impressed they nickname him Beastly Lad.
Which becomes his sort of street name.
Yeah. And the list goes on. He's headbutted by grown men. He's drugged by adults. He's forced to dress up as an Ewok at adult parties.
Which is just humiliating on top of the physical abuse.
Completely humiliating. He's forced to play gun roulette where he survives twice. He even tries to escape by climbing out a window, falls 10 liters to the dirt floor, and his punishment is just a thicker, shorter chain and tightened rations.
And then there's the rock throwing incident, which is the real turning point.
Oh my gosh, yes. Strangers are throwing rocks at him just to see if he'll dodge them like an animal. One guy gets a little too close, and Dyllannium just lunges.
He finally snaps.
He grabs the guy's head and bites his nose completely off.
It's so brutal.
And again, the author actually includes the chewing sound effects right in the text. Chop, 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 culp.
Yeah,
He loudly chews and swallows the guy's nose.
It's a moment of pure, visceral retaliation. The endurance is finally boiled over into offensive action.
Okay, I have to stop you here and push back on this a bit.
Sure.
Because we know where this document is heading, right?
Right.
We know this is ultimately a pitch from a youth worker.
Yes, a community services profession.
Exactly. So if this guy works with troubled youth, isn't glorifying a Sith Lord who bites people's noses off a terrible role model?
I can see why it looks that way on the surface.
Right. Kids with behavioral issues or complex needs don't need a manifesto on how to swallow human appendages. Is there a point where this endurance just becomes a bizarre superpower, or is this just torture porn?
I completely understand why you'd see it that way, but if we look at the psychology of role play and trauma, it's actually the exact opposite of glorifying violence.
Okay, how so?
You have to think about the kids this program is designed for. They often feel like feral wildlings themselves.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, they feel trapped, they feel like the world is throwing rocks at them, and they're consumed by a very real, very dark anger. If you hand a highly traumatized kid a sanitized, pure Jedi hero who always does the right thing, they will reject it.
Because they can't relate to it at all.
Exactly. It feels fake to them. It doesn't match their internal reality.
Ah, I see. So the character of Dyllannium Power is acting as a mirror.
Exactly. The character isn't just surviving. He's actively converting trauma into psychological architecture.
Psychological architecture. I like that phrase.
Well, the text tells us that while he sits starving, chained on a dirt floor, his thoughts are his own. He imagines himself sitting on a dark throne, looking over an empire, with millions chanting, "All hail Sith Lord Dyllannium Power."
Right. He's building this massive fantasy world.
He is constructing an alternative reality in his mind where his suffering has a grand purpose.
Yeah.
By creating a character who has endured the absolute worst the galaxy has to offer and still rises to rule, the author is giving these kids an avatar that validates their pain.
That's actually really deep.
But, to bridge the gap between that mental empire and his physical reality, Dyllannium needs a catalyst. He needs a mentor.
Which brings us to the Shadow Friend. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The basement isolation scene.
Yes. Dyllannium is sitting on his straw bed, completely isolated. He's just staring into the pitch-black abyss in the darkest corner of the basement. He stares for hours.
Sensory deprivation, essentially.
Exactly. And then the darkness starts to stare back.
This is a classic psychological manifestation born of extreme isolation, but the execution here is fascinating.
The way it's described is so cinematic. Two long, black, pointed horns emerge from the shadow.
Very demonic imagery.
Very. Then a figure steps out. It's a muscular child with the head of a bull, large nostrils, wide face, this grinning smile.
A minotaur figure.
Yeah. And the bull child screams, "I am anger!" and flexes all his muscles. And Dyllannium doesn't cower.
He doesn't back down at all.
Not a bit. He screams back, "I am rage!" and just lunges at him. They fight brutally in the basement dust for hours.
Just tearing into each other.
They wrestle until they're both completely exhausted, and then they just roll off each other and start laughing.
It's this strange, intoxicating joy of battle.
But then here is the twist. The basement door swings open, light floods the room.
Reality breaks in.
Right. Dyllannium looks at the dust on the floor, and it's completely undisturbed. He looks at the corner. It's just an empty, dusty corner. The bull child was never physically there.
The profound realization for the character and a crucial metaphor for the reader.
It totally is. It reminds me of a Fight Club-style coping mechanism, right?
A Tyler Durden for the sci-fi underclass.
Exactly. He even renames this shadow friend Barrick because the word anger inflames his fury too much. But I kept wondering while reading, is he hallucinating just to survive? Or is this the dark side actually manifesting as a tutor to keep him alive?
I think it functions as both. The psychological utility of this hallucination is immense. Barrick isn't just an imaginary friend to pass the time, he's a mentor.
He's teaching him things.
He is the internalized manifestation of Dyllannium's own repressed intellect and survival instinct. When you are entirely deprived of guidance, the mind will sometimes fracture to provide its own parent figure.
That makes so much sense. Barrick teaches him how to speak, the art of conversation, the power of words.
He educates him on the outside world?
Yeah, skills of deception, the laws of the system he plans to overthrow. He's giving him the intellectual tools to match his physical endurance.
And crucially, Barrick teaches him practical survival. He tells Dyllannium to stop depending on the meager food tray slid down the stairs.
Right, because his mother is barely feeding him.
Exactly. He shows him how to lure termites out of rotting wood using sweet straw to eat for pure protein.
Which is gross, but very resourceful.
And he teaches him to drain the dew from moss plants in the brickwork and eat the green algae. He is teaching him to sustain himself independently of his abusers.
It's completely feral, but it's brilliant. And the climax of this mentorship is incredible.
His escape.
Yes. Barrick points out that the termite-rotted wood can be carved away using the very chain Dyllannium is bound with.
A great metaphor.
So good. He uses the tool of his imprisonment to carve his way to freedom. And that's how he finally escapes. He breaks the chain, heads up the stairs into the bright light, and walks out to claim his empire.
It is the ultimate triumphant escape of the underdog, a grand mythic arc of suffering, endurance, and self-liberation.
And if the document ended there, you and I would just be discussing a very intense, very dark piece of sci-fi fiction.
We'd be analyzing a short story.
But it doesn't end there. You turn the page, and the narrative abruptly stops, and suddenly you are reading a genuine business pitch.
The transition gives you absolute textual whiplash. You are instantly pulled out of the muddy, bloody mythology and dropped right into a logistics and pricing sheet.
It really does. The story of Sith Lord Dyllannium Power isn't just a story. It's the manifesto for a real-world community project.
Which is wild.
The document outlines the Sith Empire, Jedi stunts, and lightsaber academy. It literally immediately moves from describing a child eating termites to detailing a 10-week curriculum.
And the curriculum is highly structured, too.
Tell me about it, because it's so specific.
Well, the aim is to create choreographed battles and safe fight scenes, using stunt work and acting to develop the imaginative mind. They want to give participants the physical experience of those epic sci-fi duels.
They even have a whole reverb classification system.
Yes, the uniforms.
You start in maroon, you move to black, and the highest tier is absorbent black. I love that detail, absorbent black.
Absorbent black is wonderfully specific. It suggests a level of dedication to the aesthetic, but also an understanding of how important costume and identity are in roleplay.
Because it makes it feel real.
Exactly. When you put on that robe, you aren't just a kid from the neighborhood anymore. You hold a rank in an empire.
And the courses are super accessible, too. It's $20 for a drop-in class or $100 for a 10-week cycle.
Very community-friendly pricing.
And depending on your tier, you get a personalized comic book of your own Sith Rising story or a DVD of your special effects performance.
That is a brilliant incentive.
Right. Think about that for a second. They are offering to make you the star of your own narrative. For a kid who feels invisible, handing them a comic book where they are the powerful, unstoppable protagonist is huge.
It gives them total agency.
Mm.
And the author is very concerned with the mechanics of how to achieve this safely and effectively on a community center budget.
Yes, the tech section.
This brings us to the technical section of the pitch, which is a fascinating glimpse into DIY problem solving.
I was amazed by this part. The tech section of this pitch is amazing. He wants to do Hollywood-level wire-fu stunts, but obviously doesn't have a massive studio budget.
So he improvises. Big time. He pitches a DIY motorized pulley system. Let me explain how he envisions this working, because it's wild. Go for it. He wants to take the hand-controlled remote and the actual motor from an electric skateboard.
An electric skateboard motor.
Right. He then mounts that motor to an arched overhead frame. He runs ropes through the pulley system, attaches one end to a student in a safety stunt harness, and uses the skateboard remote to control the tension and lift.
It's incredibly inventive. He is actively reverse engineering Hollywood stunt rigs using consumer electronics.
It's so smart.
By controlling the torque of the skateboard motor, he can assist a jump, slow down a fall, or pull a student backward through the air.
Exactly. So a student can fly, float, and be thrown backward into foam blocks and spring bounce boards against a green screen.
Creating real movie magic in a gym.
Imagine being a teenager and getting to safely fly backwards through the air like you just got hit by a force push.
They would absolutely love it.
But the biggest reveal of all, the key that unlocks this entire document, is the man behind the mask.
The author himself. Right. The Academy is ostensibly trained by Sith Lord Dyllannium Power, but the document lists his real name, Ryan Dillon Brassington. And then it lists his actual real-world resume.
And this is where everything we just talked about clicks into place.
It really does. This guy who just wrote 20 pages about a feral child surviving gas explosions and gang tattoos, his resume lists 8 years in childcare.
Wow.
15 years as a youth mentor and support worker in community services. 2 years working with disability and complex needs.
A very heavy, very real resume.
He has a youth diploma, a working with children check, a national police check, and he's certified in mental health, first aid, and safe talk.
It's a profound juxtaposition. You have this horrifically violent, dark, gritty fiction sitting right next to a professional life entirely dedicated to community service, empathy, and helping vulnerable youth.
So what does this all mean? How do we reconcile that? Because on paper, it looks like 2 completely different people wrote this document.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of therapeutic play, it makes perfect sense. What Ryan Brassington is doing here is utilizing the incredible power of somatic therapy and aggressive role play.
Somatic therapy, meaning physical.
Exactly. Think about the kids he likely works with. When you tell a deeply frustrated, traumatized teenager to sit down in this chair and talk about your feelings, they put up walls.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like homework. They just shut down.
It feels clinical, it feels interrogative, and it rarely works.
Right.
But what Ryan is offering is a safe, controlled environment where they can embody a Sith Lord. He is providing a space where they can explore their inner rage creatively through safe combat, choreography, and physical exertion.
Giving them an outlet.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is saying, I see the beastly wilding in you. I know you're angry. Let's take that anger, put it in a harness, and turn it into art.
Oh, wow. So the story of Dyllannium Power, the boy born in rage, chained in a basement, who has to hallucinate a friend just to survive, that's an allegory.
Precisely. It's an allegory for the vulnerable kids Ryan works with.
He is validating those dark, aggressive feelings, but immediately giving them a framework to channel that energy into a 10-week course with safety mats and green screens, rather than destructive real-world behavior.
You nailed it. The dark fiction is the flavor. The real-world execution is about empowerment, discipline, and connection.
So cool.
It takes the concept of the shadow friend, the barrack hallucination who taught Dyllannium how to survive, and makes it a literal communal activity. Ryan Brassington is stepping in as the real-world barrack for these kids.
He's their mentor.
He's teaching them the language, the physical skills, and the discipline to break their own chains.
And he's doing it with immense enthusiasm, too. Even at the end of the pitch, when he admits the electric skateboard pulley system doesn't exist yet and he's still figuring out the mechanics, he writes this wonderful line.
What does he say?
He writes, in the meantime, a person with a keen eye and weighted ends to the pulley system, hence starting group with as much enthusiasm as I, just start and give a try.
Just start and give a try. It's a beautifully optimistic conclusion to a text that started in such profound darkness.
It really is.
It reminds us that our initial diagnosis of a text or a person is rarely the whole story. The murkiness is where the real value lies.
It is. We started this deep dive looking at a feral boy chained to a dirt floor, eating moss and biting noses in a dusty basement.
Which was a lot to take in.
Yeah. And we ended up with a fully realized, deeply compassionate business plan, aiming to teach youth wire stunts and give them a safe place to belong. But to wrap this up, I think this document forces us to look at the bigger picture of how we handle youth and play in modern society.
I agree. It raises a fascinating question about the environment we create for young people today.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, have we sanitized childhood play too much?
That's a very fair question.
In our rush to make sure every environment is perfectly safe, perfectly positive, and perfectly polite, are we starving kids of the healthy darkness they actually need?
We might be.
Ryan Brassington understood that you can't defeat the monsters in your real life if you are never allowed to practice fighting them in the dark. Maybe giving kids a safe place to explore their own rage isn't glorifying violence. Maybe it's the only way to teach them how to put the lightsaber down.
That is a brilliant point. We all have a shadow self. When we look at our own unexpressed frustrations or rage, what kind of empires could we build if we, like Ryan Brassington, found a safe, creative, and communal way to choreograph those battles instead of fighting them alone? Learning to choreograph that shadow rather than suppress it might be the greatest survival skill of all.
What a fantastic thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your minds open, keep your imaginations as boundless as an absorbent black robe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Imagine a hyper-dramatic, grimdark sci-fi origin story about a Sith Lord born into pure, eternal rage. Now imagine experiencing that exact epic narrative exclusively through the deadpan audio description of a severely underfunded, scrappy community theater play. The opening scene introduces a muddy, apocalyptic battlefield. On stage, this translates to local actors wearing cheap white motorcycle helmets, jogging past cardboard doors, and making their own pew-pew laser sound effects with their mouths. Meanwhile, the script calls for a pregnant mother enduring an intensely painful, rage-filled labor in a war-torn hut. The physical production depicts this by having an actress grip a wooden A-frame while stagehands pump an excessive, blinding amount of theatrical smoke into the room. The extreme gap between the galactic stakes of the written text and the cheap cardboard reality of the stage creates an immediate, highly disorienting comedic tension for the audience. At the climax of the opening scene, the exhausted mother finally presents her terrifying new sick baby. The smoke clears to reveal she is holding a tightly swaddled, completely rigid plastic doll. The script dictates that the newborn has glowing eyes of rage. To pull this off, the crew literally taped bright red and yellow LED diodes directly onto the doll's plastic face. The actress playing the mother looks down at these blinding LEDs, feigns an exaggerated look of dramatic disgust, and perfectly mimes tossing the horrifying infant directly onto a bright blue gymnasium safety mat. This absurd prop execution instantly lowers the audience's suspension of disbelief. They are now fully primed for a story defined entirely by its homemade physical comedy, rather than its intended narrative darkness. We move into the second act, set in a bleak dirt basement on a distant world. Here, the growing protagonist is chained to a thick wooden pole, represented on stage by a painted PVC pipe and a flimsy plastic Halloween chain. What follows is a rapid-fire sequence of slapsticks torture. It starts with actors in bright yellow construction hard hats crowding the boy, aggressively flicking unlit prop cigarettes at his chest. Then comes a massive gas-fueled explosion. The practical effect consists of a stagehand tossing a handful of red confetti into the air alongside a loud audio cue, while someone simply knocks the cardboard house set over. The violence escalates when the boy fights back against one of his captors. He rips off the attacker's foam nose, leans in close, and loudly crunches it directly into a hidden lapel microphone. The threats keep getting weirder. We get a tense game of prop gun roulette that yields only comedic clicking noises, followed shortly by a brief, unexplained cameo from an actor stuffed into a poorly fitting Ewok costume. Through sheer lack of budget, these rapid-fire sequences completely bypass the grim reality of a childhood abuse narrative, turning it instead into an escalating series of slapstick stunt sketches. The lights suddenly shift. The tone drops. From behind a black velvet curtain, a figure named Barack steps onto the stage. Barack is described as a menacing, muscular bull child. The actor achieves this look by wearing a pair of cheap plastic bull horns and loudly blowing directly into his microphone to simulate a swirling cloud of basement dust. Their introduction immediately peaks with a full 5-minute, highly choreographed tumbling and wrestling routine across the blue sponge mats. The script forces them to deliver intense dialogue about eternal rage and newfound brotherhood, while both actors are visibly heavily exhausted from throwing each other around under the hot stage lights. The arrival of Barack gives our protagonist a necessary physical sparring partner. The production abandons the solo torture narrative entirely to showcase a collaborative, sweaty stunt routine. We reach the climax. The boy prepares his ultimate escape by surviving on bugs, an action he conveys by vigorously miming eating termites out of a wooden block. He shatters his plastic Halloween chain. Without missing a beat, he steps directly into a highly visible, heavy-duty stage harness strapped to the floor. This schematic shows the central mechanical stunt, a bespoke pulley system powered by a modified electric skateboard bolted to the floor. When triggered, the wheels spin as a winch, snapping the rope taut and violently hoisting the actor over a foam barricade. It is an incredibly clumsy, swinging flight. It represents the absolute peak of the creator's DIY ambition, colliding head-on with the limits of physical reality. The actor lands heavily on a green screen mat. The house lights instantly flood the room, blinding the audience. He reaches to his hip and ignites a glow-in-cop lightsaber. The deadpan audio describer calmly notes that the actor has broken the fourth wall. He is now pointing his illuminated plastic blade directly at the front row. A giant QR code is abruptly projected onto the back wall. The theatrical performance immediately ceases, transitioning into a high-pressure live business pitch. The creator, Ryan Dillon Brassington, reveals his offer. For $20 an hour, or $100 for a 10-week cycle, you can officially join the Sith and Fire Jedi Stunts and Lightsaber Academy. Paying students receive choreographed battle training, DVD special effects packages of their performances, and a personalized comic book detailing their own dark origin story. The entire absurd, hyper-violent stage play was an ingenious, interactive commercial designed to recruit paying students directly into Ryan's local stunt academy.